What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell because we are in the middle of one of the most consequential off-seasons in New York Rangers history, and today we are breaking down something massive. Chris Drury has made a series of moves this summer that have completely shifted the narrative around this franchise, and whether you are thrilled, nervous, or somewhere in between, one thing is crystal clear. The blueprint is no longer a mystery. The plan is right in front of us, and today we are reading every single detail of it. Let's set the stage because context is everything here. The Rangers had a disastrous 2024-25 season, the first time they failed to make the postseason under Drury as GM. Think about how far this franchise had fallen. A team that won the President's Trophy in 2023-24 absolutely cratered the following year. And when the dust settled, the Rangers finished last in the entire Eastern Conference. Dead last. That is not just a bad season. That is an organizational crisis. That is the kind of collapse that ends careers and sends front offices into full panic mode. But here is where it gets interesting. Drury did not panic. He did not fire sale everything. He did not wave the white flag and announce a full rebuild. Instead, he made a calculated bet. And that bet is now starting to pay off in ways that are becoming impossible to ignore. Now, before we get into the moves themselves, we have to talk about the word that became the most controversial term in Rangers fandom over the last 12 months. Retool. Drury came out and stated that the team wasn't going to be rebuilding, and instead that there was going to be a retooling. Rangers fans heard that word and they were split right down the middle. Half of them said, okay, I trust the process, let's see what this looks like. The other half were absolutely furious because in their minds, a team that finishes last in the East doesn't get to call what comes next a retool. They thought a full-blown rebuild was the only honest answer. But here is the thing, Drury never said what most people assumed he meant. And this offseason proved that in the most dramatic way possible. Because what Drury did was not a quiet, patient reset. The New York Rangers did not spend the offseason behaving like a team willing to wait. Chris Drury changed the roster, surrendered valuable draft capital, and placed another bet on a quick return to contention. That is the real story here. This is not a GM who is stockpiling picks and crossing his fingers. This is a man who looked at his situation. A team with Adam Fox and Igor Shesterkin in their prime, a fan base starving for success, and an ownership group that demands results, and decided the time to act aggressively was right now. So let's talk about what that aggression actually looked like, because the moves Drury made this summer are genuinely stunning when you lay them all out. On June 26th, the Rangers acquired Pavel Dorofeyev from the Vegas Golden Knights, bringing in a 25-year-old forward who has scored 72 goals the past 2 seasons, 37 last season and 35 in 2024-25. 72 goals in 2 years. Let that sink in for a second. This is not a reclamation project. This is not a guy who showed flashes once and disappeared. Pavel Dorofeyev is a proven elite goal scorer at the NHL level, and he is 25 years old. The Rangers signed Dorofeyev, who was a restricted free agent, to a 7-year, $77 million contract. 7 years. $11 million a year. Drury committed to this man for the long haul, and that tells you everything you need to know about what he sees in this player. But the cost was real. The Rangers sent the number 26 and number 92 picks in the 2026 NHL draft, and a top 10 protected first-round pick in the 2028 NHL draft to Vegas. That is serious draft capital. That is the kind of price that makes you gulp a little, especially for a team that just spent a year at the bottom of the standings. But Drury did not stop there. Not even close. After trading for Pavel Dorofeyev, Marcus Pettersson, Sean Durzi, Jonas Korpisalo, drafting Albert Smith's 5th overall, signing Oliver Bjorkstrand, Joe Veleno, trading Vincent Trocheck and Will Borgen, and doing a few other things, most fans would accept that as a successful offseason considering where the Rangers were and where they stand today. That is not an offseason. That is a complete roster overhaul compressed into a matter of weeks. And the man himself was fired up about it. Drury says the organization is energized by the moves they've made in the past week, saying they were targeting young players in their prime that enhanced the skill and speed of the team. Young players in their prime. Skill and speed. That is the mantra. That is the identity Drury is building toward, and when you look at every single move through that lens, it all starts to make perfect sense. This is not a team being rebuilt from scratch. This is a team that is being redesigned around a specific style of play that Drury and head coach Mike Sullivan believe gives them the best chance to win in today's NHL. And speaking of assets coming back, let's talk about the Vincent Trocheck trade because this deal reveals so much about the way Drury thinks. New York traded Vincent Trocheck to Utah and received defenseman Sean Durzi, prospect Cole Bedoin, and a 2027 third-round pick. That deal at least brought back a young center with first-round pedigree. It was evidence that Drury understands the organization needs more than established NHL players. He is not just acquiring ready-made contributors. He is also threading in prospects, future assets, players who are going to grow into this new system. That balance between now and later is exactly what separates a smart retool from a desperate scramble. Now let's address the elephant in the room, because not everything about this offseason has been universally praised. A scout said, via Peter Baugh and Vincent Z. Mercogliano of The Athletic, I think Chris has made some missteps along the way, but at the same time, I do think they're in a better spot now than they were at this time last year. That quote is fascinating. Even the critics, even the anonymous hockey voices who are paid to find weaknesses in roster construction, are acknowledging that the needle has moved in the right direction. Yes, there were imperfect deals. Yes, the cost in draft capital is real and will be felt down the road. If the current group fails, those selections could have been part of the next version of the team. Nobody should expect New York to become a Stanley Cup favorite overnight. The Rangers are trying to re-enter the playoff picture first, then determine whether this reshaped roster can become something more. That is the honest assessment, and we should all hold onto it, because expectations need to be grounded in reality. But here is what I keep coming back to: the Adam Fox situation. Because in many ways, what happened with Fox tells you more about Drury's vision than any trade or signing ever could. New York Rangers general manager Chris Drury is reportedly telling teams interested in star defenseman Adam Fox to get lost. Multiple teams checked on Fox's availability, but Drury quickly shut down those conversations, effectively telling interested clubs to get lost. Get lost. That is not the language of a GM who is unsure of himself. That is not a man who is hedging his bets or keeping his options open. That is a general manager who knows exactly what he is building and knows exactly who belongs in the foundation of it. Holding on to Fox does send a clear message. Despite last season's disappointing finish, the Rangers still view themselves as a team built to contend rather than rebuild. And that message resonates when you consider the bigger picture. The Rangers were a better team when they had Adam Fox and Igor Shesterkin on the ice and were healthy. These are two of the best players in the league at their respective positions, and the team believes that the window of opportunity to win with them is still open. That is the core belief driving every single decision Drury has made. The window is not closed. It is not even close to closed. What needed to change was everything around those two foundational pillars, and that is exactly what happened this summer. Now let's look forward, because the real pressure begins now. With a ton of moves and an aggressive offseason in which the team did trade away 3 first-round picks, the pressure is going to be on to be an improved group. 3 first-round picks. That is a significant bet. And the 2026-27 season is going to be the first real referendum on whether Drury made the right calls. The Rangers need to determine if defenseman Albert Smits, the 18-year-old they selected with the number 5 pick in the 2026 NHL draft, will be NHL ready in October. That is a fascinating subplot all by itself. A teenager potentially stepping onto the ice at Madison Square Garden and being asked to contribute from day one. That is the kind of high-wire act that either defines a franchise or derails it. And there is still more work to be done. Drury makes it perfectly clear that the Rangers' offseason overhaul is far from finished. That statement, coming from a GM who has already executed one